Well, well, well. Seems that everybody's making videos about what I'm gonna call hopping on the grind wagon. I guess you could say that's how I'm gonna frame it. I'm gonna hop on the grind bandwagon as well, because I think this all kind of started when European Canadian made his video about the Italian copy paste American vehicles, and I think he was spot on with literally everything in that video. And I think, obviously, I don't know this whether or not people's motivations, but I think people decided to make videos about grinding in general based off of that video. That's just how I view it. Could be the case, could not. I don't know. Also, Spookston made a video too that could have also been the reason. But I just wanted to touch on it myself, and it's a very complicated issue that War Thunder has going right now. Is you want the game to have longevity, but at the same time you want it to also be enjoyable enough to where it's not a chore to grind. And I just played this match in the Abrams today, and it grinding the HSTVL still. I mean, I've played on two streams trying to grind it, and it's just taken too long. Considering I've also been playing Battlefield these past couple of days too. That obviously has impeded my progress, but nonetheless, I mean, I'm only halfway through the HSTVL, and I was playing America nonstop for those 2 days I was streaming, and then a couple days here in between. And it does feel like a chore. It does feel like a chore, but it's not solely because things cost too much or rep costs are too high. It all kind of combines into this mesh, this concoction, this smoothie, if you will. Although it's not really smooth, um, of problems. Repair costs are one issue for the SL grind. To be able to afford vehicles in the game, that is one aspect. The other is RP grinding. These aren't just affected by my luck this or my luck that. There's a lot of factors that contribute to how easy it is to grind, and it's different for all nations because all nations have different vehicles. And I think Gaijin trying to make it symmetrical at low tiers with giving everybody lend-lease or copy-paste stuff, if you will, didn't really do what they thought it was doing, and in turn it actually made the grind boring. And it may have made it maybe slightly easier in terms of everybody kind of being on the same playing field, but it was also extremely boring. And that's what Canadian touched on in his video, that it kind of just makes it very sluggish, and nothing comes about of it. And it just, I don't know. It's definitely a core issue that copy paste vehicles have just brought another problem that they were intended to solve, but they just created a new issue. That issue being, well, you've got even more vehicles to research on top of stuff, but it's the same vehicles, and at those tiers, everyone driving around the same vehicle doesn't exactly give anybody an advantage or a disadvantage in some form. It made it mundane, and really, honestly, it's I want to go in depth in maybe another video to each nation, but it is different. Like, America is going to have a tougher grind than Russia at some tiers because America's stuff is maybe weaker than Russia's. Or the biggest problem, which for anyone that plays top tier knows, the nations that play together makes it a lot tougher. It is a lot harder to grind America at top tier in Britain than it is to grind, say, Sweden or Italy or France, which their repair costs have been hiked up. And that's, again, another complete different issue that is the fault of Gaijin's automation, if you will, their algorithm to calculate repair costs. That's a whole different fucking rabbit hole that is just ridiculous. But those nations are easier to grind. However, their artificial repair costs, again, it's one gear or cog, you could say, in the contraption. That it isn't the sole reason, but the repair costs are definitely an artificial grind, whether it was intentional or not. Again, I'll go into a video about that some other time. But the nations are easier to grind in the sense that they are aided by Germany and Russia a lot of the time, which are more major nations with more people playing them. They have sometimes in some respect, not necessarily better players, but it just helps pad out the match to give their team more variety, which is part of the reason why America and Britain are so boring, is because there's no variety. There's no dynamics to the game. Everybody just shoots you in a turret ring, or if you're a challenger, just shoots you in the lower plate and you're dead. Those are the two spots that people pretty much have to memorize to kill people that play America and Britain. But all the other tanks, like T80U is vastly different to a 2A5, as a 2A5 is even different to a 122 or a Leclerc or an Arrietty, which arguably the Arrietty is pretty much pennable anywhere, so I can't really you can't really argue with that. It doesn't really have any weak spots. It is just a driving weak spot, but again, that's just kind of how it works. It's just dumb. I don't know. Really don't know what to say anymore. Now, I try to offer a solution here, and that solution would be is you have to start from the ground up. Tier 1 and Tier 2, and as a matter of fact, I'll actually do this separately in videos. Tier 1 and Tier 2 are pretty easy going because everything down there is, high rate of fire, not that much armor, at least most things, B1 piston stuff, or, some things are exceptions, but still, Tier 1 and Tier 2 are pretty much solid. That's just kind of meh. I mean, it's most of the time it is allies versus axes, so there's really nothing wrong with those. And it starts to get hairy once you reach the Sherman like the later Sherman tier, where everybody's got a fucking jumbo Sherman, or some tanks are unique, like the SA50 Sherman, FL10 Sherman, that one being a premium though. There are some unique tanks, but the problem is that everybody is basically just playing arcade and RB because everybody's got the same thing. And there are alternatives to a lot of this stuff, but Gaijin has said, they don't want to add wacky vehicles, but again, Canadian was right here. Just add in the Italian Panzer IV-G. They had a whole division devoted to him. I don't know why they denied that, unless it was a Panther, if I'm mistaken. They denied giving Italy some German vehicles, even though that's what they used, even in small numbers. I mean, it doesn't. They removed the mouse in the Panther and the Tiger. The mouse was just not really balanceable, but the Tiger and the Panther they had a different reason to the mouse. They were there artificially to give the tree something there at that tier that everyone could mainly use until more vehicles are added. Why can't they do that to Italy? Italy will never have as many vehicles as Germany will. It just doesn't make any sense. Why didn't they do that? That would have made more sense. That rule could have applied to Italy, and in some respects, kind of actually France, maybe. But yeah, I don't understand. That rule would have applied to Italy so well, and because, okay, they had one division of Panzers, whatever the hell. Okay, great. But in War Thunder, we're not talking about how many people had what. Everybody, there's tens of thousands of people playing this game, so there's going to be tens of thousands of Panzers. Just because Italy had 8 in real life doesn't mean that it can't be in the game. While the Panther 2 was completely fictional, it was using a gun that it couldn't fit and yada yada yada. It's a whole different ball game I don't want to get into, but still, it could have applied for Italy instead of giving Italy American vehicles. Now, Italy after the war did have a lot of influence from America. I get that. They do have the Pershings, which are fine at that tier because that tier needs them. But at low tier, they didn't need a Chaffee or 2 Shermans, as a matter of fact, since the one's the premium. They didn't need that. They could have gotten German, Panzer counterparts. There's no reason for it. And I think that this problem kind of has existed for a lot of the other smaller nations. And now it's gotten even harder because there's more nations in the game. There's more balancing to be taken into account. It's just a huge issue. So all I offer as a solution is that we got to start somewhere. The community, content creators or something, got to get together and got to discuss where to start, because it's all over the place. If we don't know where to start, we're never going to solve the issue. It will never get solved. We'll just keep talking about it over and over and over again. So it's time to point a finger where we should start with this and start working towards fixing the game a little bit. We need to work with Gaijin in order to solve these issues. If not, then the game will die.
Warriors around, don't get caught in the mosh pit. Fuel to the fire, ain't nobody can stop it. Trouble in my city, but you know I'm across it. Got a 40 on my hip and I'm liable to spark it. Throw down these hits, my click is indivisible. I aim, you duck, I squeeze, now you invisible. I'm not afraid of getting physical. All these different chemicals are fogging up my visuals. Bloods on my hands, got slugs on my gunners. Yeah, we notorious, we ain't no runners. Bloods on my